Hey there, this is Chris Edney with FlatRateQuote.com. I'm glad you're here. Today I'm going to show you how to get started with a tool, and we're going to walk through a customer so that you know all the fields and what to expect. You ready to get started? Let's go. Here we have our sign-in page. If you're already a member, go ahead and sign in. If not, click here to sign up. When you first come into FlatRateQuote.com, you're going to need to set up your company name and a minimum charge if you want one. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and enter Flat Rate Quote. And then here is where I can enter the minimum charge. Now, I don't have to have a minimum charge. I can take on any client for any amount. Or I may decide that I only want to take clients at a certain amount. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and enter $200 as my minimum amount. If at any time I want to change that minimum amount, it's easy enough. All I have to do is come back over here into settings and adjust it. So I'm going to keep this at 200 for now. Now it's time for us to enter a customer. I'm going to come over here to add customer. And the first thing you'll notice is as I come in, I have this monthly charge, $200. What this has done is it's already said that we should charge this client $200. That's because it's the minimum. If we put in 0, the monthly charge would show 0 right now. Let's go ahead and enter our first customer. Here I'm going to enter a company called Tesco. And that company is at 123 Main Street in Lexington, Kentucky. Now it's going to ask us some basic information about this customer. We have the opportunity to choose which day we would have our reconciliations due. The earliest we have listed is the 10th. We have all the way through the last day of the month. The earlier the reconciliation, the higher the charge is going to be. Right now, I'm going to keep it at the 20th. Here, I have the ability to turn on regional pricing. The regional pricing function is a calculation that will change the overall price based on the cost basis for that particular area of the country. For instance, if you have a customer that is in New York or Los Angeles, the price will be a little bit higher. And if you have a customer in Lexington, Kentucky, where I am, then the price could be a little bit lower. If you want to turn that on, I think it's kind of a neat feature. So I'm going to turn it on here. Here we have cash versus accrual. If your client is cash, you would choose that. Otherwise, you would choose accrual. In this case, I'm going to choose cash. And then some customers will send a message and want to be responded to right then or that day. Some customers will send a message and they're okay if you don't get back to them for a day or two. If you have a customer that is fairly relaxed, then choose next day or second business day. If you have a customer that needs an answer right then, it seems fair that we would charge them a little bit more and you could choose same day. In this case, I'm going to choose the next business day. If my customer has international currency, I could turn that on. If they have class tracking, I can turn it on. Job costing and location tracking, you can turn all that on here. For this particular client, I'm going to turn on classes. And then we come down to the chart of accounts. There's a couple of ways we could do this one. With chart of accounts, you could use the entire chart of accounts that is available to the customer. But in my experience, most customers don't use their complete chart of accounts. They use a select subsection of those accounts. And that's what I like to put in here. So what I'll do is I will pull a detailed balance sheet and a detailed P&L for the last 12 months and look at which accounts were used. That's the number that I would put in here. This particular client uses about 60 of their chart of accounts. Here's also where we can track fixed assets. And I say track, if you were going to be responsible for tracking fixed assets and depreciation for your client, you could enter the number of fixed assets you have to track here, and that will bump up the charge a little bit. In this case, we're going to go ahead and put in 2 fixed assets that we have to track. And then when it comes down to the average invoices, sales receipts, AR per month, there's actually 2 places in the tool where you can enter this. If you have a customer that doesn't deal with inventory, you may want to go ahead and enter here the number of invoices that would be created in a month. For instance, if you have an attorney or a lawn care business or something that doesn't particularly deal with inventory, go ahead and enter the AR here. If you do deal with inventory, you may want to wait until later in the questionnaire and enter it there. In this case, I'm going to assume that this customer uses some inventory, so I'm not going to fill out this right now. Here we have average payables per month. I'm going to assume that this client has 25 payables per month. And then for sales tax filings, many clients will just have sales tax in a single state. Some bigger clients may have sales tax in every state. Here, I'm going to say that they just have sales tax in one state. And then if you have to enter a sales tax journal entry, you could enter the quantity of journal entries here. I use QuickBooks and I love the sales tax feature in QuickBooks, so I almost never have to enter a sales tax journal entry. But if you do, you would put the quantity here. And then last, for the initial intake, we have the historical cleanup. Of course, many times when you get a client, things have not been going right. Many of them come to you with, one of my friends says, dumpster fires. So if a client comes to you with a dumpster fire and you need to go back and clean up several months, you can turn on historical cleanup here. Effectively, what that does is it assumes that you're going to have to do a certain amount of work for each month, and it calculates that in as a separate charge. Right now, we'll see that the monthly charge recommended is $224. When I turn on historical cleanup and add I'm going to say that we have 3 months of historical cleanup. We have the monthly charge, and then it says the onboarding charge, which is the amount that we would recommend that you charge for the historical cleanup. As we go through the questionnaire, both of these numbers are going to change. As we add things, they're both going to go up. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So now that we've entered some basic information about our client, we're going to go through 7 basic questions. And each one has some nuance that may or may not apply to your client. If your client doesn't do inventory, you can skip the inventory section. If your client doesn't do payroll or doesn't use you for payroll, then you can skip the payroll section. So all of this is mix and match to use what you need and ignore what you don't need. The very first question here is, does your client link their account through automatic bank feeds? If you're using QuickBooks Online, then chances are high that you have connected a bank account, credit card, loan, something for an automatic feed. If that's the case, you would choose yes here. And then this goes through a few different categories of transactions. We have bank accounts, credit cards, apps. So this would be like PayPal apps, Cash, Venmo, that sort of thing. E-commerce, do they use Shopify, for instance? Webgility. Do they have traditional loans? Do they have a line of credit? Do they have merchant cash advances? And do they have any other loans that don't fit into these categories? In this case, I'm going to assume that this client has 1 bank account and around 100 transactions a month, 1 credit card and around 50 transactions per month. They don't use a Cash App. They don't currently use Shopify. They do have 1 loan that comes in through a bank feed, and that has about four transactions a month, and no line of credit. So when I'm ready, I'm going to go to the next question. And in this case, it says, does your client have any accounts that are not linked to a bank feed? Many times this would be a mortgage, a loan. If there is like a shareholder loan or something that needs to be managed that's not with a financial institution, this is where you would record that. So in this case, I'm going to assume that our client has 1 loan that is 3 transactions a month. Now, if you notice over here, the first section, we added $58 a month. With this part, I clicked on it. With this part, the manual feeds, it added $10 a month. I'm done with this and I'm going to go to the next question. Will you process payroll for your client? I'm going to say yes in this case. So I'm going to turn on payroll, and then it asks, how often do you do payroll? Weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly? I prefer semi-monthly because I think it's easier to track. So I'm going to do that. This client has 3 employees and they're all in the same state. Here, if you specifically are responsible for tracking employee time, so not an employee, not a time app, just if you've got to go figure out, how much this employee worked and then run payroll, then you would want to turn this on. This gives an upcharge for that extra. If your client is using like QuickBooks Time or something to keep track of it to where you can easily feed that in, then I would leave this off. Here, are you tracking 1099s? And specifically for 1099s, that means, are you responsible for collecting the W-9s and then sending the 1099s? If that's the case, go ahead and turn this on. My client here does use 1099s. And then here, it gives you the opportunity to track manual 1099s. There are some rare circumstances when you can't track a 1099 here, or maybe you did track a 1099, it's not in the system, and you need to do a manual one. If you know that that's coming, you could go ahead and enter that here, and it would adjust the charge. Are you doing payroll journals? If you're using like QuickBooks Payroll and QuickBooks Online, you don't have to worry about payroll journals. It's all internal. If you're using ADP and have trouble with the connection, like I always do, then you may want to go ahead and turn this on that you're going to do 2 journals per month. All right, so I'll do that. And then this one says, are the payroll journals manual or auto? Usually auto will be pre-populated. Are you doing any benefits tracking? So you're tracking sick leave, anything else that would be outside of payroll that you are responsible for. You can go ahead and turn these on. So that bumps up the charge for payroll. Next, we're going to look at inventory. Now, I said that this client does have inventory, so I'm going to turn this on. So track inventory, yes. Do they use bundles? I don't know, if you've never used bundles, they can be kind of tricky. If they use bundles, we do an upcharge for that. In this case, I'm going to say no. Average units sold per month, let's say 125 units per month. And then what do they replenish each month? I'm going to say that they replenish 125 units. And then do I do any purchase orders for them? In this case, I'm going to say that I do 2 purchase orders per month. So that shows that inventory, $258 per month. Financial services. Many bookkeepers will offer additional financial services, and this is a place where you can capture those. The first one here is a catch-all. So I would recommend that if you turn this one on, you leave all the others off, because in my opinion, most of these would roll up under business advisory services. But if you don't do business advisory services and just want to pick and choose some of these, then you can absolutely do that. So let's leave this off, and then we'll say, so our client, do they want cash flow forecasting? Yes, they want cash flow forecasting. Cash flow reporting would kind of fall into cash flow forecasting, so I'm not going to turn that on. Dedicated account manager. Do they want to make sure that they can pick up the phone and talk to just me or send an email and get just me? If that's the case, you can turn that on. So I'll turn that one on. Financial reports. Yes, I'll provide financial reports to them. FP&A is actually similar to business advisory services, but it's a little nuanced. If you offer that, turn it on. KPI reporting, intangible benefits, monthly client meeting. You can turn all of that on. Do you do tax preparation, either quarterly or annually? You can turn that on. If you do budgets, you can turn this on. And then tax deduction, corporate renewal, property tax filings, annual budget, all of that's available for you to turn on. At this point, we've got pricing here for each category. and is recommending that we charge $1,274 per month for this client. Next question, number 6 is a catch-all. I have had clients that, bookkeeper clients, that feed horses on the weekends, or they're responsible for taking one of their clients' dogs on a walk. There was another one that has to physically drive the checks to the post office and make sure that they're sent. If you do any of those extra services, you can turn this on and say, drive to post office, and I'm going to charge $50 a month for that. You can put that here. If there's something else you want to add, click add a service. Dogs on weekends. Charge $50 for that. This is just a catch-all for anything that was missed in the first 5 questions. So go here, and then we come to the last section. This is where we have an opportunity to look at this number and say, I agree with that. It's too high, it's too low. So let's take a look at this. Are there any upcharges or discounts that you would like to include? One, is it a challenging industry? Some industries are a lot harder than others. Working with attorneys and keeping up with retainers, that can be challenging. I worked with a client that not only was I the bookkeeper, but I was running HR, I was running FP&A, I was running finance, I was running sometimes I was personal counselor. Something like that would go in a difficult client. I may do a 25% upcharge for something like that. Or I may come in here and say, well, this is a friend who constantly refers me business, and I don't want to charge them the full rate. I want to give them something else. Or this is my mom's former roommate's cousin's uncle, and I need to give them a discount. So here, I'm going to give them a 10% discount. All of this gives you the ability, 3 opportunities to upcharge and 1 opportunity to flex it down. So here we are. We're at the end of the quiz. So we'll complete that. And then we have Tesco says the recommendation is that we charge $1,234 per month and an onboarding charge of $3,972. That's how the tool works. And in my experience, I've used this several times. What it does is it gives me the ability to price clients with confidence, knowing that not only do I have the ability to bring in some help, so I'm not doing it all myself, but make some margin on top of that. My favorite part about flatratequote.com is the ability to use efficiencies. If you charge by the hour, you're actually working against your own self-interest. Because if it takes you 10 hours to do something, but there's a way to do it in 5, it's hard to justify doing it in 5 because you're cutting your income in half. But if you charge a flat rate per month and it takes you 10 hours and you can find an efficient way to do it in 5, all of a sudden you have that 5 hours back. You can spend that any way you want. Hanging out with friends, hanging out with family, coaching, or picking up a new client and making that 5 hours even more impactful. That is Flat Rate Quote in a nutshell. I hope you enjoy using this tool. If you have feedback, please give it to me. This is version 1 of the tool, and I know we have opportunity to make it better and better and better. And with your help, we're going to be able to do that. Thank you for watching the video.